All right, good morning. If you turn to the book of Judges, chapter 14, this morning we're going to be in verses 10 to 20. I'm continuing our study on Samson. We started looking at him a few weeks ago with his birth and then looked at him as the man. And this morning we're continuing to look at this figure who is used of the Lord, but quite a tragic figure at the same time. So Judges chapter 14, verses 10 to 20, the title of the sermon this morning is Immaturity in the Hand of God. Immaturity in the Hand of God. So let's read the text, open us in a word of prayer, and we'll jump into the sermon this morning. Judges chapter 14, beginning in verse 10. His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. As soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, "Let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes." And they said to him, "Put your riddle, that we may hear it." And he said to them, "Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. And in 3 days they could not solve the riddle. On the fourth day they said to Samson's wife, 'Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us?' And Samson's wife wept over him and said, 'You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is.' And he said to her, 'Behold, I have not told my father nor my mother. Shall I tell you?' She wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted. And on the seventh day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, 'What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?' And he said to them, 'If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would have not found out my riddle.' And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and he struck down 30 men of the town, took their spoil, and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house. And Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man." Sounds like a soap opera. Let's pray. Lord, we pray as we look at this text that is filled with riddles in more than one way. God, it's confusing and perplexing. And what are we to learn from this, God? What do you want us to glean? What truth do you want us to have? Lord, I pray that you would help us to walk away from this text with things to meditate on, truths to learn, that you have given us the life of Samson in your word for our edification. God, I pray that we would be edified now, that you would edify us by the power of your Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Which creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? According to Greek mythology, the Sphinx sat outside of Thebes and asked this riddle to all travelers who passed by. If the traveler failed to solve the riddle, then the Sphinx would kill them. If the traveler answered the riddle correctly, then the Sphinx would destroy herself. No one was ever capable of answering correctly until one day Oedipus came along. Oedipus was promised the hand of the princess should he interpret the riddle correctly. As he was famous for his wisdom, Oedipus found the answer to the riddle with ease, replying, "Man, who as a baby crawls on 4 legs, then walks on 2 legs as an adult, and in old age walks with a cane as his third leg. Riddles were popular in antiquity, and they're still popular today. There's something captivating about the enigmatic nature of riddles, and we see that in our story today. This morning, we're going to begin with the context to bring us up to speed of where we're at, and we'll then get into exposition of the text, and then I'll close with application of the text. So let's begin with context so we're all up to speed on where we're at. Israel has returned to their sin again, and God has delivered them over to an oppressor again. God has allowed the Philistines to oppress them for 40 years. And we're given some indication in the text that Israel had somewhat accepted their oppression as the status quo, but God had not accepted it. God rescued his people from 400 years of slavery that they would be free, out of slavery, out of oppression, not enslaved. So God steps into the story and he appears to a barren woman and he tells her, "You will have a child, but this will be no ordinary child. He will be a Nazirite, devoted to God, and he will begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines." This child is born, and fast forward some 15 to 25 years, we don't know, but he's now a man and he's ready to marry. Only he doesn't want to marry an Israelite. In a journey to Philistine territory, he spots a Philistine woman. We don't know her name, but when he sees her, he tells his parents, "Get her for me." His parents disapprove, but because of Samson's stubbornness, they are forced to acquiesce. On the way to bride negotiation, suddenly a lion out of nowhere jumps out to attack him. And what would normally mean certain death for Samson turned out to be certain death for the lion. The Spirit empowers Samson, enables him to tear this lion apart. Sometime later, on the way to his wedding, Samson turns aside to revisit his victory, but he's met with an unexpected surprise. The rotting lion carcass has become a home to a beehive producing honey. Samson defiles his Nazirite vow, scooping out some of the honey, eating it, but touching a dead corpse in the process. He also causes his parents to be defiled by giving some honey to them, and he doesn't tell them where he got the honey. Israelites were defiled when they touched a dead carcass or dead corpse. And that's where we left off last week. Now, everything that happened in verses 1 to 9 is connected to verses 10 to 20. Verses 1 to 9 is a series of events that will set into motion the events in verses 10 to 20. There's a direct cause and effect that we have here in our story this morning. So let's look at it. Let's look at an exposition of the text, beginning in verse 10. Here we go. His father went down to the woman, to his wife, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. Now, Samson's father goes and travels the 7 or 8 miles to Timnah. I assume his mother went. We don't know. It doesn't say, but I assume she did. And when Samson gets there, he prepares a feast. And the reason he prepares this feast is, the narrator says, because this is what the young men used to do. Now, again, we're given the indication that Samson is young. How young, we don't know. I would guess between 15 to 25, but he's young. 2 things I want to point out. A, it's unclear if young men here, that phrase for so the young men, it's unclear if that's young Philistine men or young Israelite men. Text doesn't say. But I think that it's young Philistine men. Meaning, I think Samson is perhaps following Philistine culture here. B, the word for feast, he prepared a feast. There are many words for feast. This particular word normally means drinking feast. That's what it normally means. Now, to be sure, the text does not say whether Samson indulged or not. Perhaps he didn't. But if he did, this would now be the second time and the second category where he has broken his Nazirite vow. He is not to partake of the wine or any alcohol. He has gone near a dead body, and if he drinks at this feast, he He has now partaken of the vine. Verse 11. This again appears to be a Philistine custom. They bring in these 30 companions. Now it's debatable as to what's going on here. Why do they do this? Who are these men that they bring in? Are they companions? Are they attendants? Are they groomsmen? That's a lot of groomsmen. Man, talk about groomsmen gifts. Are they security detail? I'm somewhat inclined to believe that they're security detail. I don't think that they're companions. I think they're security detail. Verse 12 to verse 13a. Keep in mind, this wedding feast lasts 7 days. Well, you can't eat and drink for 7 days straight. I guess you could, but that gets boring. So what better to do than play some games? Let's play some games. So Samson has a riddle that he wants to propose to his 30 companions. But before he tells them the riddle, he wants to up the excitement. Let's make this more exciting. Let's make a wager. Let's make a bet. If they can answer the riddle, he will give them 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. This is essentially, think of it as 30 really nice full body underwear and 30 suits. That's what a linen garment was, their underwear. All right. So think of like really, really nice. Now, keep in mind the period in the culture, right? You might think, well, what a big deal, right? In those days, most people might only have one linen garment and one change of clothes. It's not like today. They don't have like Nordstrom's where they can just go and like, you open our closets today, we've got like clothes, right? That's not how they lived. So this was a precious commodity. All right. If they cannot answer the riddle, then they will owe him 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. So either they will each get one linen garment and one change of clothes each, or he'll get all 60. Now this is an interesting wager. Why? Because does Samson have 30 linen garments? Does he have 30 changes of clothes? No, he doesn't. So why would Samson wager something that he doesn't have? We'll see. Look at verse 13b. He proposes the riddle, or he proposes the wager, and then the question is, are they going to accept the terms of the wager? Of course they are. Of course they're going to accept the terms. Why not? For 3 reasons. A, there's 30 of them. It's 30 minds put together, right? B, they have 7 days to solve it. Normally, you don't get that much time. I mean, if I give you a riddle, I don't give you 7 days. It's like, man, you got to solve it now. They give them 7 days to solve it. And C, riddles are meant to be solved. He doesn't give them a quantum physics equation. He gives them a riddle. Riddles are meant to be solved. So, of course, they take the bet. Verse 14a, Samson proposes his riddle. Now, the explanation and the answer to this riddle are extensive. I was reading articles and articles because it's hard to understand. One of the problems with riddles and poems is that so much is lost over time and even more so in translation, right? It's like riddles, try translating a riddle like from Chinese to English or English to Chinese. It's just like impossible to do, right? And so that's part of the problem. But essentially, the riddle is 2 lines and 3 Hebrew words per line. That's what the riddle is. 2 lines, 3 Hebrew words per line. Here it is. First line, first word, from the eater. That's 1 word in Hebrew. Second word, out came. Third word, eat or food. Second line, first word, and from the strong. That's 1 word in Hebrew. Second word, out came. Third word, sweet. So what's going on here? There's a parallelism going on here where eater parallels strong and eat parallels sweet. And then there's also assonance going on here. There are 4 maims, which is the Hebrew version of our M, and 4 alepphs, which is our version of A. So that's what the riddle is. There's the parallelism, the assonance. Here's what the riddle is essentially asking. So if I can translate this into English. Here's what the riddle is asking. How can a strong consumer of food produce sweet food? How can a strong consumer of food produce sweet food? Now, where does Samson get this riddle from? From his experience, from verses 5 to 10. Now, what's sad about this is that Samson proposed a riddle that there's no way they could have ever solved. Why not? Because they weren't there when Samson killed the lion. They weren't privy to this information. They didn't see the dead lion. They didn't see the beehive. They didn't see the carcass. They didn't see the honey. They weren't privy to this information. And it wasn't as though this was a common experience. Normally, if you give a riddle, it has to somewhat tie into real life experience, right? Where you could guess it if you just thought about it enough. But this isn't a common experience. This is such an anomaly that they would never get this. They were never going to solve this, which is why Samson proposed it. Why did Samson wager 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes that he didn't have? Because he gave them an impossible riddle that he knew they couldn't solve. Carl McDaniel says the riddle in Judges 14:14 is presented poetically, but the intention of Samson's riddle was not to help them understand the wisdom of human experience. The teaching of Samson was focused on his own greatness, and it was not given for the benefit of others. Riddles are meant to help us teach us the wisdom of human experience. They're help for the hearer, when they hear the answer to the riddle, they're like, oh, yeah, that's true. Right? But that's not what the purpose of this riddle was. The purpose of this riddle was just for Samson to be like, you're not going to get this. Verse 14b to 15. After 3 days, all 30 of them can't solve it. How could they? So what are they going to do? They're like, we don't want to lose the game. Even more than that, they don't want to give this Israelite 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. So they put their heads together. We need a plan. And they come up with a plan, but a wicked one. Verse 15b. They go to his wife. Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Now, let me just say, as a side note, if you're hung up on this word wife there in verse 15, Samson has almost certainly not gone into his wife. It was custom for the groom to go into his wife at the end of the 7-day feast, but during the period of betrothal, she's still considered his wife. Just like Joseph and Mary. They had not consummated their marriage, but they were considered married. That's how it worked in their custom. All right. The 30 men tell her to entice him. Entice him. Now that word entice can be translated seduce, deceive, flatter, persuade. Same word will be used of another woman in Samson's life, Delilah. We'll get to her. They essentially blackmail Samson's wife. They essentially say, listen, find out the answer to this riddle, or we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Now, house here is not referring to physical structure. They mean find out the answer, or we will burn you and your family alive. This is similar to what Ephraim said to Jephthah. Remember Ephraim, when they weren't called out to battle, they said, why did you cross over to fight against the Ammonites and did not call us to go with you? We will burn you with your house over you with fire. This tells us the spiritual condition of the Philistines, what kind of people they are. This tells us the spiritual condition of even the Ephraimites and Israel and what kind of people they are. And their last statement here in verse 15, have you invited us here to impoverish us? That is essentially saying they're suggesting that Samson's wife is in on it. They're suggesting that this is all one ploy by both Samson and his wife, that the only reason these 30 people were invited there was to swindle them. They're con men and con women. That's what they're suggesting. So what is she to do? She's in a conundrum. She can remain loyal to Samson, but risk her family dying and maybe herself dying. Or she can betray Samson and save her family's life. She chooses her family's life over Samson. She begins this manipulation tactic. She, says, "You don't really love me. You hate me. You haven't told me the answer to your riddle. If you did love me, you would tell me." And what does Samson say? What's his defense? "Listen, I haven't even told my parents. I've known them for 15 to 25 years. I haven't even told them. What makes me think I'd tell you? I've only known you for 15 to 25 days. Samson's statement reminds us of verse 9, that he didn't tell his parents. He has not told his parents. He didn't tell his parents about the lion. He didn't tell his parents about the honey. And it doesn't appear as though he has a change of heart here. It doesn't appear that he is remorseful from hiding this from his parents. He just callously is like, "I haven't even told my parents." It seems that Samson likes to keep secrets. He likes the power he feels when only he knows something. He doesn't tell his parents about killing the lion. He doesn't tell his parents about where he gets the honey. He doesn't tell his wife the answer to the riddle. He feels powerful when he has information that only he knows. But just like Superman, Samson has his kryptonite. Verse 17a. The first part of the verse means when it says that she wept over the 7 days of the feast, that phrase can mean one of two things. Either A, she had been weeping over this before they blackmailed her. So maybe once he proposed the riddle, she was actually weeping the whole time over this, and we don't know. Or B, it means that she wept over him the remaining time of the 7 days. I don't know which way to translate it, but it means one of those. Either way, Samson's kryptonite is a woman pressing him hard. Samson held out for 7 days. For 7 days he holds out, but on day 7, he finally tells her the answer to the riddle. Why? Because she pressed him hard. The phrase that's used there, same phrase is used in another place, Judges 16:16. And when she, Delilah, pressed him hard with her words day after day and urged him, his soul was vexed to death. There's such an ominous foreshadowing in our story today. For all his physical strength, Samson will show himself to be quite weak. Weak in resolve, weak in character. Verse 17b. Once she gets the answer to the riddle, what does she do? She tells her people. Now, here's the greatest irony. Here's the most tragic and greatest irony of this entire saga. This woman is weeping over Samson to get the answer to the riddle. Why? So that her life will be spared and her family's life will be spared. But it is her getting the answer to the riddle and telling it to her people that will set into motion a series of events that will cause her and her family to be burned with fire. That's maybe the saddest part of this whole story. She was doomed to fail either way. If only she could have known who she was marrying. Perhaps she could have gone to Samson and told him, "Samson, they're blackmailing me." And Samson would have taken care of business. The Spirit would have rushed upon him and he would have taken care of business. But how could she know? How could she know who this was? Verse 18a. So at the 11th hour, it's day 7, the sun's going down. There's only a little bit time left. You can imagine Samson, he's already like measuring his size up. He's like, I'm a 32, 44. He's like, oh yeah. And the men come rushing in, and they say something quite interesting to Samson. They don't technically answer his riddle. They answer his riddle with a riddle of their own. But they do it in a way that reveals that they know the answer to his riddle. Today we call this one-up. Samson gave an impossible riddle, but they one-upped him by giving him a riddle that revealed to him that they knew the answer to his riddle. And their riddle is very clever. They deliver it in the exact same form and structure as Samson's riddle. 2 lines and 3 Hebrew words on each line. First line, first word, what? Second word, is sweeter, 1 word. Than honey, 3rd word. Second line, first word, and what? Second word, is stronger, 3rd word, than a lion. They pose this riddle to Samson. Now, what is the answer to their riddle? That's debatable. My best guess is either A, there is no answer. I think that the riddle is that it answers the riddle. There is no answer to it. It's just meant to be a riddle to show them that they know the answer. Or B, the answer is Samson. What is sweeter than honey? I mean, what is sweeter than honey? Sex. What Samson's there for. Why he's there at this wedding. What is stronger than a lion? Samson. I don't know which one is correct. You be the judge. Verse 18b. When Samson hears their riddle, he realizes he's lost. He lost the bet. But he has one more riddle to give to them. This again is a 2-liner. He says, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would have not found out my riddle. In other words, you cheated. That's what his riddle means. You cheated. Now this riddle is revealing for 2 reasons. A, it shows the insensitive nature of Samson. Who's the heifer? His wife. He refers to his wife as a heifer who submitted to the yoke of the Philistines. That's what it also maybe have an enigmatic nuance. I'm not sure about this. I think it's possible. It's unclear if Samson is suggesting, when he says, if you had not plowed with my heifer, he's suggesting that one of them slept with his wife to find out the answer. I don't know. B, Samson basically admits that they were never going to find out the answer to his riddle. When he says you cheated, he's essentially saying, look, he accuses them of cheating, but he cheated first by giving them a riddle that was never going to be discovered. All right. Verse 19a. What happens next takes us by surprise. So many things we could expect to happen at this, right? Samson, says like, okay, you got me. You got me. I got to pay you. You cheated, but fair's fair. I got to pay you. Samson sulks. He goes and pouts and sulks for a while, but then he agrees to pay them. He rages in his flesh and just starts punching walls but then he pays them. So many things we could expect, but what actually happens? Who could have expected that this is how the story would go? We, the readers, are completely caught off guard by this. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. This is no coincidence. God is intentional in everything that he does. He provides the Spirit in a moment of anger. This is now the 3rd time that the Spirit is mentioned in the life of Samson. Why did God provide the Spirit here at this moment? Verse 19b. We must not miss the connection of verse 19a and 19b. It is because the Spirit rushed upon him that what follows happens. He goes down to Ashkelon. Now, Ashkelon is a prominent city in Philistia. It's 20 to 25 miles to the southwest of Timnah. He goes down there, and what does he do? He kills 30 men of the town. He takes their spoil. He takes their linen garment and their change of clothes. He gathers up his 30 linen garments, his 30 changes of clothes, and he goes back to Timnah. Samson has now gone from killing a lion to killing 30 Philistines. Now keep in mind, God is doing this. God is doing this. God had said that he would begin to deliver his people from the Philistines. God starts with 30. He starts with 30. When Samson gets back, he is true to his word. He gives his 30 companions to the garments he promised them. What they don't know is they came from a dead man. Round one goes to Samson. Or should we say, God. Verse 19c. The story takes another unexpected twist. You know, we talked at the beginning of Judges, the roller coaster nature of Judges, how it was just up and down like this. Not only is Judges like this, but this story today, it's like one of those corkscrew roller coasters, you know, where it's just like, I mean, every time you see one twist, there's another twist coming. We can't even prepare ourselves for these twists. Samson is angry. The narrator says hot anger. I don't know what that means, but hot anger, right? We have to wonder, angry at what? What's he angry at? Is he angry that his wife betrayed him? Angry that he lost the bet? Angry that he didn't get the 30 pairs of underwear and the 30 suits? He's so angry that he doesn't go back to his wife. He goes back home to his dad's house. And that's pivotal. Why? Because that leads to verse 20. Now, what is a father to think when the groom doesn't stay for the whole wedding and just leaves? What would any dad think? Well, I guess he doesn't want to marry my daughter. Well, she's got a wedding and she's got to marry somebody. Well, gives his daughter to one of Samson's companions. His best man. Now be careful with that word best man. You might think like, man, his best man, like that sounds like something out of like Dateline or something, or like Jerry Springer, or his best man. That translation may be a little misleading. It may just mean one of the 30 companions whom he was closest to. Best man is not the best translation there. But again, this twist is going to lead to another twist in chapter 15. His dad doing that, or her dad doing that, is going to lead to the events in chapter 15. We'll get there next week. Okay, that's our exposition. Now, what do we do with all this? Application of the text. I had a hard one with this because I'm like, oh, Lord, what do you want me to like? Be careful with riddles. What do you want me to do with this, Lord? Like what application do you want me to draw from this? I want to highlight 3 elements in our story today. Number 1, Samson's immaturity. Number 2, that immaturity and the hand of God. And number 3, our weakness and the hand of God. Number 1, I want us to look at Samson's immaturity. Samson chose this woman because of her looks. Let's get that straight. He chose this woman because of how she looked. He bases his decision on the flesh, not the spirit. He makes demands of his parents. He tells his parents, get her. He's not supposed to be demanding things from his parents. Their culture is the parents decided who the child marries. He dismisses their counsel. He doesn't listen to them. He hides his victory over the lion from his parents. He takes a detour to relive his victory. He disregards his vow and he eats honey out of the carcass. He defiles his parents by giving them honey. He hides the source of the honey from his parents. He throws a feast like the Philistines do. Whether he drinks or not is debatable. We don't know, but I would guess yes. That's just my guess. I don't think he's going 7 days while everybody else is getting drunk and he's just sitting there as Mr. Sober. Maybe he is, maybe he's not. But if he does drink, he is defiling his vow for the second time. He makes a wager that he can't pay. The terms of the wager are not fair. He gives them an impossible riddle. They could never solve this. He essentially cheats. He is ruled by his flesh. First, his flesh for the woman. 2, his flesh for honey. And now his flesh for possessions. He wants 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. Why do you need that many changes of clothes? I don't even think I have 30 changes of clothes. His riddle is intended to glorify himself. He shows no remorse about hiding this from his parents. He gives in to his wife's nagging. He will soon show that women were a major weakness in his life. He acts insensitively to his wife, calling her a heifer. After delivering on his promise, in hot anger, he returns home to pout. Samson has shown himself to be an immature young man. But 2, I want us to see that immaturity is in the hand of God. That immaturity, everything that we just looked at, is all in the hand of God. The narrator tells us that in verse 4, the Lord was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. Now, to achieve that opportunity, he gives a child to a barren woman. But when God gave this child to Manoah's wife, he knew that this child was going to grow up to be an immature man. God wasn't taken by surprise by this. God knew that Samson was going to be a man who was rash, selfish, fleshly, weak, brute, hasty, angry, egocentric, and immature. God knew this. Samson may be an immature young man, but he is still an immature young man in the hand of God. What I love about chapter 14 is that it's one of the greatest stories of cause and effect in the Bible. Even though the Lord is barely mentioned in chapter 14, the cause and effect that happens in chapter 14, it bears the signature of God. It reveals the hand of God. I want us to consider the link of events. These are all connected. They'll be on the screen for you. Samson goes to Timnah. When he goes to Timnah, he has desire for a Philistine woman. Because of his immaturity, he dismisses his parents' counsel. That leads to marriage arrangements. Marriage arrangements leads to him traveling back to Timnah. Traveling back to Timnah leads to him meeting a lion. Meeting a lion leads to the spirit rushing upon him. The spirit rushing upon him leads to the lion's death. The lion's death leads to bees and honey. Later, fast forward. There's a wedding. That's what you do when you get married. There's a wedding in Philistia. Now, because of Philistine custom was bring 30 companions. Now, because of Samson's personality, he wants to have some fun. Let's have a riddle. And not only a riddle, let's make a wager. Now, bring back, where does that riddle and wager come from? Bring back the lion honey episode where we left off at the first part. Because of all of that happening, that gives him the riddle. Now that leads to impossibility to solve the riddle, which leads to the Philistines' evil, which leads to blackmail, the death threat of the wife, which leads to enticement, which leads to Samson's weakness, which leads to the answer revealed to the wife, answer revealed to the Philistines, answer revealed to Samson. Anger toward the Philistines. Enter God. Spirit rushing upon Samson. Killing of 30 Philistines. Beginning of God's deliverance. Verse 4. And then there's more. The losing of the wager led to Samson's anger. His anger, because of his immaturity, led to him going back home to his father's house. His going back home to his father's house leads to his wife being given to another man. And his wife being given to another man leads to his next confrontation, which we'll look at next week. All of this cause and effect is the hand of God. All of it. Daniel Block writes, with brilliant irony, the narrator describes a free spirit, a rebel driven by selfish interest, doing whatever he pleases without any respect for his parents and with no respect for the claims of God in his life. But in the process, he ends up doing the will of God. Barry Webb says that Samson is an immature, incensed, out-of-control youth, but at the same time, he's a weapon in the hand of God, being propelled relentlessly and unerringly toward his destiny as Israel's Savior. Which leads to number 3, last point. Our weakness in the hand of God. The story of Samson leaves us wondering one central question. This is the central question in the story of Samson. God, why did you use this man? You could have used anybody. Why did you use this man? He is rash. He is foolish. He is brutish. He is selfish. He is weak. He is egocentric. He is deceptive. He is unfaithful. He is immature. And yet, God still uses him. If we are encouraged by nothing else in Samson's life, may we be encouraged by this. If God will use this man, surely he will use us. Our weakness is in the hand of God. Brother, sister, maybe there's something in your life that you say, I'm weak in this, I'm not good at this, I'm not talented in this, I feel my weakness in this. Your weakness is in the hand of God. Our lack of experience is in the hand of God. Our lack of knowledge is in the hand of God. Our past failures and mistakes are in the hand of God. Our trials and temptations are in the hand of God. Our wandering from God in Babylon is in the hand of God. Our future is in the hand of God. Our sinful proclivities are in the hand of God. Now, I understand you can take that and run in a lot of bad directions with that theology. But you can also run in a lot of right directions with that. That especially our community needs to hear. This church body needs to hear. You are not defined by your weakness or your failures or your past mistakes or what you're not good at or what didn't happen. That is not what defines you or your future or who you are. You are in the hand of God, and God will use whoever you are to accomplish what he wants to accomplish through you. I pray that you will trust that.